Hello, this is a Brave 9 Mercenary spotlight on Stella. Stella and her sister Rasha were born under a prophecy. They were taken under custody by a dark cult, and Stella had to lean on dark powers to break free from her otherwise gruesome fate. I'll briefly go over Stella's skills, gameplay style, and provide some of my opinions on her. I won't be going over the details of her skills, but just the general parts of it. I linked the Brave 9 Encyclopedia in the video description where you can easily read on her stats and skill values. Stella's first skill is Night Guide. This skill is basically to provide some established rules for Stella's buffs. First, Night Guide makes Stella permanently immune to attack interferences. Second, Stella always targets herself as the buff target. This means that unlike conventional support, Stella won't target her next ally, but instead, always targets herself as the main support. Given Stella's 4 range tile, she will consistently provide support buffs to the units within 3 tiles behind her. Lastly, Stella's Bloodthirst and Power Thirst buffs are instantly removed from allies if she dies. Stella's second skill is Bloodthirst. Stella grants her allies lifesteal and will heal a percentage of the damage they deal with their normal attack. This buff lasts for 70 turns and can't be removed via nullifiers. The only way to remove this buff is if Stella dies. Stella's third skill is Power Thirst. Stella grants her buffed allies a boost to crit rate. At +6 and above, Stella also grants an attack boost to buffed allies. Similarly to Bloodthirst, Power Thirst lasts for 70 turns and can't be removed other than by Stella dying. Stella's Awakening skill is Stats Weakening Immunity Bestowal. Stella grants her buffed allies Stats Weakening Immunity for 12 turns. They won't be able to be cursed or be afflicted with other stat drops. At +13 and above, Stella's Stat Weakening Immunity also comes with reduced incoming damage taken. Stella is a support primarily designed to work with warriors and vastly increase their performance while also bestowing some elements of survivability onto them. Stella is unique in that her support buffs are essentially permanent until Stella herself dies. Unfortunately, Stella is incredibly fragile and boasts one of the lowest health values of any unit within the game. Once Stella dies, her offensive buffs are instantly removed from her allies. Stella is also unique because she always targets herself. This makes her versatile and flexible to use in support chains as she only needs to worry about positioning. The last of Stella's unique traits is that Bloodthirst is a mechanic that is rare among characters in Brave 9. Stella is the only support that is able to grant lifesteal to her allies, which is unique, but unfortunately very niche. Stella's main weakness lies in her support tiles. Since Stella always targets herself when she supports, she always consistently buffs the 3 units behind her. That means that Stella has to be in front of her allies consistently, as opposed to being tucked away in the back. Stella pretty much dies to anything, so putting her closer to the front line is not ideal. This also forces players to run formations that load many units into one lane to optimize Stella, which can set them up for counters that wipe lanes effectively. Stella's buffs are also limited in usage as well. While her buffs are strong, they only enhance attack and crit rate. Crit damage is an important element too that is unfortunately left intact, which can result in some situations where units don't seem to deal as much damage as opposed to being buffed by other supports. I'll now go over what Stella counters. Stella is primarily used to provide Stats Weakening Immunity and unremovable offensive buffs. This causes her buffs to be ideal for warriors to deal with curse counters. Primarily Stella buffed units could do well against Celia, Cecilia, Eden, Angelica, and Levia. Stella is a valuable component in helping units like Barbara kill Grandhilder as well. Barbara's normal attack can apply curse and also strip stat enhancements. Unfortunately, Grandhilder can reflect both of those back to Barbara, but since Stella provides Stats Weakening Immunity and also has unremovable buffs, Barbara is left unaffected. I'll go over some Stella counters now. Stella forms have distinct patterns and weaknesses to units that have strong horizontal coverage. Christina, Orfina, Nartis, Kyria, Barbara, and Alec are great for blowing up Stella formations. In premeditated forms, finding a way to hit Stella will result in her death, so you can simply use any AoE attack to snag her. So some synergies with Stella. Stella synergizes incredibly well with Michaela. Michaela provides the other 2 immunity types that Stella does not, which are DOT immunity and attack interference immunity. With Stella and Michaela, you make 3 units almost have the full immunity coverage to everything but stigmas. Also, Michaela provides powerful crit damage buffs, but not crit rate. Michaela also drains the life of the allies she buffs, but Stella can offset that with her lifesteal that she grants to her allies. The 2 synergizes insanely well. Stella goes well with any other warrior that does not have innate Stats Weakening Immunity. Stella provides a very powerful crit rate buff that can push most units to 100% crit rate alone. Some warriors that appreciate Stella's buffs are Barbara, Yuri, Ludmilla, and Valze. Stella's lifesteal buff is very niche, but could be useful on tankier units who may not be one-shot or lack reliable methods of healing on their own. Orfina, Catherine, Eleanor are 3 units that appreciate lifesteal. Stella's lifesteal could backfire on certain units however, so be warned. Mora is a character that prefers to be at lower health as she has mechanics to increase her damage and defense the lower life she has. Alec has an additional damage component that kicks in if he's not already at 100% life after he attacks. Stella's lifesteal can cause Alec to heal to full where this won't trigger and he may miss out on a lot of damage. Similarly, Eden also has an additional damage component that scales with his missing life value. If he's at full, this almost deals no damage. Be wary of units that intend to play on life's edge when buffing them with Stella. Okay, so for my opinion, Stella was a valuable unit for her time, but she presents a lot of outdated concepts that don't really mesh with what the game is about nowadays. What Stella has going for her is her unremovable buffs and stats weakening immunity. Those two things alone allow her to still have use in Guild War, where you may encounter situations where you need 2 or more units to reach 100% crit rate and still have stats weakening immunity. At least Guild War is the only place where I find myself using Stella within the last few months. The main issue with Stella is that she's a very all or nothing for a support that gives little else. Optimizing Stella requires you to position her closer to the front line, but her buffs aren't strong enough to justify that. Lifesteal is a mechanic that is only useful on a small handful of characters since many units in this game tend to get one shot. The defenders that can survive multiple hits generally do not deal enough damage with their normal attack to get much value out of lifesteal. Her offensive buffs only provide attack and crit rate. Critical damage is left untouched, which is unfortunate for units like Angelica or Frisia that depend on more crit damage to ensure kills. Stella was fairly mainstay around a year ago, but lost her shine after the 6th Devil update, where Stella and Michaela combinations were phased out by Raphithia, who proved to be overall more versatile. Stella and Michaela is still a very powerful combination, but it's not efficient by today's meta. So should you invest in Stella? My answer is a definitive no. Stella is an outdated concept unfortunately, and most supports are far better and efficient without needing to put themselves purposely in harm's way. Stella is unique, but she isn't good. Her skill up progression is also very inefficient. Stella only sees her offensive buffs being somewhat useful starting at +6 and above. She only gets somewhat decent at +12, but that's a bit expensive for a pretty gimmicky character. I can't help but feel that Stella is the mold of the aura mechanic since her skills work similarly to that of Celia's and Sola's. Stella's buff only remain if she's alive and are permanent otherwise, similar to the existing aura skills in the game. In fact, I kinda wondered if they might rework Stella's skills to her aura instead and have her buff only provide stats weakening immunity. That might push Stella to some form of viability, but I don't think it would actually be too strong either. Interesting food for thought. Anyways, Stella sucks. I'm sorry folks. Hard for me to reason otherwise for this one. She's only somewhat viable in Guild War. Thanks for watching my Stella Mercenary Spotlight. Feel free to comment your thoughts. If you have a request for a character spotlight and they have their companion update already, then no need to be shy. You can just request it. I'm kinda just jumping around at this point. Anyways, laters.